Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast podcast and FA Cup special. Seems like every podcast is a special these days. I am your host Chris and it's a Sunday evening here in the UK once again, so it's time to talk football, and as you would imagine from an FA Cup special, that is what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm joined by my two regular co-hosts now, Josh and Ross. Good evening to you both.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hopefully the weekend finds you both in fine fettle. We've got plenty to get our teeth into tonight. We're not going to go through every fixture because, frankly, I'm sure plenty of you don't really have that much of an interest in Blackpool 0, Barnsley 0, for example. But we will nevertheless rattle through all the results and pick out some of the highlights. And we should say at this point there is one more fixture to be played, which is Cambridge against Leeds United on the Monday at time of recording, the day after when we're recording this live. So can't predict how that one's going to go, but there's one left before the draw, of course, which we'll retweet from our podcast as well. So let's jump straight into it then, gentlemen. Where shall we start? I think we'll start at the very beginning of the weekend. West Ham versus Manchester City was chosen as a television game. Did they really think there was going to be an upset here? Was it just an excuse to get Man City back on the telly? I don't know. But Man City ended up winning 5-0. Ross, I'm going to come to you first because I said to you pre-Christmas, I said I think Slaven Bilic will be gone in January. This result doesn't exactly help that for not becoming a truce, does it?
No, but I'd still be surprised if he went at all. Not just in January, I'd be surprised if he went at all, flat out. I think the owners are too busy trying to invest with him and try and develop the team under him because he is still a very good manager. The fans have always loved him and he did very well last season, so I'd still be very surprised to see him go. But certainly this result puts a bit more weight in your camp. I do agree. It's a very, very embarrassing defeat, especially at home, live on the telly, so big defeat for them. But I'm most often noted for criticising Pep and pointing things out about his style, but that was a fantastic win for Manchester City. You know, the performance is exactly kind of the kind of thing he's after week in, week out. You know, I think he also quoted the slickness of the pitch under the rain and the space you're given at the London Stadium because it's so much wider as great assists to his style of play. So really good performance from them. But yeah, as for West Ham, I mean, you could probably make a better case for getting rid of Bilic than I could if that's your position, but I'd still be surprised myself.
Yeah, it will be one to keep an eye on. Don't get me wrong, I like Slaven. To me, he looks like that guy who's still trying to order another pint when it's closing time's been called half hour ago. He looks really like emotionally beat up. He looks like a man who's lost. He's losing the sort of the drive in the job. I don't know. Just have a bad feeling for big Slaven, but we'll see. What did you make of both sides, Josh? Obviously, Ross was impressed with City. I have to admit, at times I was impressed. But I thought it was more about how poor West Ham were on the night. Once one goal went in, really, for me, you could just see everything drain out of them. What was your sort of view on the game overall?
Yeah, I think West Ham had almost given up by the time the second goal had gone in. It was a strange atmosphere in there. It's probably the first game I've seen in the Olympic Stadium that's been televised, and it was really deathly quiet in there. It's really quite an odd atmosphere. Perhaps that's why Bilic is still there, because you can't really hear anyone in Rose Ed up there shouting for him to be gone.
That's a fair point, actually. That's a very fair point.
For the record, people in Rose Ed can't even see the field. So
no, that's also true.
And it's all just dots to them.
Screen. Yeah, that is very, very true. Early favourites for the competition, Man City. Do we all agree with that? I suppose they probably are, aren't they?
Ugh. I wouldn't go for them myself. I would probably put Man United as favourites for it, but they're a very dangerous unit. I do worry about cup competition on them, though. I think they've got bigger fish to fry, because clearly if they miss out on the European places in the league, that's a much bigger concern for me.
Surprised that Pep picked quite a strong squad, actually. I didn't think he would. But yeah, Man City probably one of the early favourites. Certainly not the same favourites that one Paul Merson picked out on in the UK this week. If you haven't seen the clip, it's all over Twitter. He was asked by the presenter of Soccer Saturday in the UK who his picks for the tournament were. He went with Everton, Stoke and Bournemouth. We'll fill you in on how they got on in a minute, but let's just say that wasn't the greatest of predictions on his behalf. Let's move on then to the next day, the Saturday, where obviously the majority of the fixtures took place. Josh, it opened up with a 4-0 victory for Manchester United. Another cleverly picked televised game. No upset, never any doubt of there ever being an upset. Probably the only upset really was Ali El Habsi, who must have been extremely upset about his own performance, particularly for the fourth goal from Marcus Rashford. But that isn't really where the story of this game is. It's probably more about Wayne Rooney and equaling Bobby Charlton's goal-scoring record. Impressed with Man United, and anything to say about Rooney's record?
Yeah, I think it's been, just in his response to it, awesome and an honour to actually get to that. And you can't take that away from him. He has scored 249 goals for Man United. But the way he's done it, and you've expected more from him, I think, with Wayne Rooney. He did start his career very young, so perhaps his twilight years have come earlier than perhaps one of his teammates, Ibrahimovic, who his style of play, he's changed it a little bit. Rooney is more box to box, and I think his engine is slowly burning out. So he's got to rediscover his form, but I'm sure he'll be up towards 275, 300 by the time he leaves Man United and will go down as an all-time legend.
There's a lot of talk that, of course, he'll get the record and then parachute off to China. I'd be interested to see if that does end up happening, or if indeed he would want to be over there. We shall have to see. Ross, it wasn't a good day for Jaap Stam and his Reading side, really, was it? Would you venture to suggest that the promotion from the Championship is more likely to be their main objective, and they're not going to lose too much sleep over this result?
It absolutely has to be, because this Reading team and the season they're having is probably as good as I can remember them since the season they came up with Southampton, which was 2009. 2009, Christ, that was ages ago. 2011, 2012, I want to say. That team was a brilliant counter-attacking team, and it absolutely stormed the last 10 games of the season. This one has just controlled nearly all the games of the season, barring like a handful. So I've been really, really impressed with them. I don't think you got to see the best of them on TV against Man United, which is a shame. I would have loved to have seen a lot more people on Twitter coming out and saying how impressed they were about Reading. But certainly if they can just carry on doing their business in the Championship, just keep their heads down, carry on playing the way they've been playing, then absolutely playoff position is well within their grasp, and they are, well, whenever you're in a playoff position, any team in there can go up, and I certainly think Reading have got the ability to do it. So I don't think they'll be too concerned. It would be a shame to have lost 4-0. That would be something that I imagine Jaap Stam will be pretty annoyed about, but at the same time allows them to refocus, just get back on with the league and prove Man United wrong next season.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, good. Couple of good performances on the day from a few Reading players, but not to the level that would have been needed to win this result over. Goal for Rooney, two goals for Marcus Rashford in this performance as well, and Man United comfortably through. The goal from Martial, of course. So that's the two Manchester clubs through. So we're going to sort of start to work our way through a couple of the fixtures from the Saturday list. Josh, start with Ipswich to Lincoln 2. You wanted to say a little bit about this game. A little bit of a surprise, this, and Lincoln maybe come away thinking they could have done more, particularly with the pressure that's on the Ipswich manager Mick McCarthy at the moment.
Yeah, Lincoln trying to do their best to get towards a giant killing in this fixture. You've got Tom Lawrence is very lucky to save the blushes of Mick McCarthy, who has got a lot of pressure on him now. This, thinking around the Championship, that perhaps he's done all he can with this squad, this group of players and this club. Potentially it's time for him to seek a new challenge. I don't know if off the result of this, if he'd lost the game, would he still be there come this morning? Potentially not, but it's something to keep an eye on, and it'll be a very good replay to have a look at with Lincoln hosting Ipswich probably in a couple of days' time.
It's all gone very sour for Big Mick, hasn't it? Every time I think of Mick McCarthy, Ross, you'll like this analogy. I always think of that GIF file that goes around Twitter when it's the
What, have you been in the dugout?
the Marvin Gaye one. Yeah, is it Marvin Gaye? I think it is. Yeah, just that I've been feeling it. Is that Marvin Gaye?
I don't know. I'd have to hear it to tell you.
Oh, somebody's going to really kill me for that. I'm sure it's a Marvin Gaye. So anyway, it's the I've been really trying baby song, and he just does this sort of casual lifting of the eyebrows, and it's just brilliant. If you haven't seen it, look it up.
I believe that is Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye.
Of course it is. Oh, thank God. Thank God I got that right.
Yes,
wow.
it is.
There you go. So if you haven't seen it, just type in Mick McCarthy Sexual Healing. It'll come on.
Be careful with that, Christ.
yeah, crikey. You might find all sorts. So apologies if you do.
Big Mick sex tape.
I was going to say it might be a Paul Jewell moment. My God. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards. Okay, Ross, you had something you wanted to bring up about another result, which was the Swansea game. Marco Silva, installed as the Hull City manager, as you mentioned on the last week's special that we did, got off to a win, 2-0. A certain Paul Merson has caught your ire with regards to the Marco Silva appointment or comments that he's made about it. What did you make of this 2-0 win for Hull, and what were these comments that got your goat a little bit?
Well, to start off, the win is brilliant for Hull. I have only seen the highlights of this game because so few games are actually televised in the FA Cup. But some of the football that was played is actually really, really nice. In such a short space of time as well. It looks already like Marco Silva has just said, just pass and move. Just find some space, pass and move, keep moving. And the second goal, I think it was, in particular, was really, really nice football. And I'm already quite quietly impressed with the way they dispatched Swansea. Obviously, we're going to need to see them across the rest of the season before I can draw too many conclusions on him. And I do have a bit of a soft spot for Marco Silva because he was linked with Nottingham Forest back in the summer, and then he was linked with the Wolves job when Kenny Jackett got the sack. And I know that he's also in the Slamton Black Box, and he is touted as the next big manager. Paul Merson is a guy I really like to listen to. I know he does wind people up, and he can say some hideously stupid things at times. But at the same time, his reading of the game is very down to earth. It's very dry, I suppose is the word for it. It's very, very condensed, and it's so nice to hear it sometimes from a professional who can just be direct and blunt about it. At the same time, he does have a bit of a reputation with putting his foot in it when it comes to people and players from other countries. I think he's already wound a lot of people up for his Dimitri Payet comments. And this week he came out with why is Marco Silva getting the opportunity but not Gary Rowett, and going 32 games unbeaten or whatever it was at Olympiakos is something that anyone can do, and it happens all the time in Greece, blah, blah, blah. I think that he's going to end up with egg on his face over this one. Obviously, Marco Silva could end up not doing very well with Hull. They could end up going down. But at the same time, I think Marco Silva is a manager that we're going to be hearing a lot more about in the next few years. Latiz made the point on the show as well that Pochettino came in with the exact same reputation. Who's ever heard of him? Why aren't we going for X, Y, and Z? And Pochettino is now arguably one of the best coaches in the country. So for me, it was just a really silly thing to be saying, why not Gary Rowett? Why Marco Silva? Well, two different managers, two different preferences. We don't know what the situation is at Hull. The rumours are today that Gerard Lopez, the guy who's going to be taking over at Lille in the next couple of weeks, now is interested in buying Hull. Now, I know Gerard Lopez really likes Marco Silva, so has he had a hand in that? Do they know something we don't? Is he going to be coming in? Is he going to be investing in Hull? We don't know. But I just thought the comments from Mercer, I thought, were a bit reactionary, and I just thought, just give him some time, just at least let him play the game first before we start picking him apart, because I don't remember Bob Bradley getting that kind of stick when he went in at Swansea. I know he got far more stick after it, but it just seemed odd to me that he decided to pick on Marco Silva when I genuinely think he's going to be a brilliant manager in the next few years.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And as I said on the special the other day, I think he's a manager that is, is highly touted around Europe. And to answer your other question about the Lopez thing, I think that's exactly why he's been installed there. I think Lopez is very keen on a Premier League club, and that would make perfect sense. So yeah, that's one to watch very closely. A good result as well for Hull City, as you say, confidence booster if nothing else. Let's pick out another game then, another one for you, Josh. You want to talk quickly about Barrow and Rochdale? 2-0 win for Rochdale, so I suppose you'd call the favourites going through in that one. But nice day out, for Barrow without being too condescending? They've come this far. What was your take on this fixture?
Yeah, so just to echo your thoughts on that with Barrow, yeah, they'd be very pleased with and show a lot of pride in how far they have got in this. Getting to the third round is big for anyone. I think the only shame they'll have is that they ended up with someone like Rochdale coming to them. No disrespect to Rochdale because they're absolutely flying, but when you end up in the third round draw and you're a long league team, you look at trying to get someone like your Chelseas, your Arsenals, your Man Uniteds down to your ground just for the grand day out and the TV revenue money that comes with that, which is a shame. But I think they've got a lot to hold their heads up high with this run that they've had in this year's FA Cup.
I've got a friend who's a Barrow fan. They have just gone on a 25-game unbeaten run, I believe, in all competitions.
Yeah.
And it ended about 2 or 3 weeks before the game against Rochdale, which is also a local derby. So I know he was quite up for it. Well, when the weekend came around, but he was also quite disappointed to have not gotten someone quote-unquote bigger when the draw was made. He said to me that the game kind of came at the wrong time for them. If they'd been able to face Rochdale still unbeaten, then he reckons they could have had something. But when the undefeated streak kind of broke, heads might have dropped. And Rochdale, let's be fair, have been in fantastic form in League One. They are suddenly dark horses to go up as well. So, yeah, it was a really, really good fixture, one that I was keeping a keen eye on. It's kind of a shame that Barrow couldn't get the upset, but yeah, like Josh, I think they'd be so happy to get to the third round. I'm personally just glad they didn't draw Southampton, because I would not have been able to live with him for the last month if we'd drawn them.
No, and yeah, you're absolutely right. We'll touch on Saints with you in a minute as well, but I want to come to another all Premier League affair for you next. I want to touch on Everton 1, Leicester City 2. I know I kind of mocked Paul Merson's comments earlier on about picking Everton as a potential winner, and they've obviously exited the competition. I thought this was a real surprise result. 2 goals from Musa coming off the bench after Lukaku had put Everton in front. Surely Koeman would have seen this as a competition that Everton could have gone deep into. Surely they would have been one of the sides that would have had this on their bucket list to progress quite far into this season.
It's
so
tough with Koeman, though, isn't it? Because I can tell you from experience with Southampton, he chops and changes so much during cups. It's almost difficult to take it seriously when he says that I want to win this, because he always made changes for it. He always seemed to unprioritise it or deprioritise it. I don't think they made too many changes for Everton, though, did he? So he's clearly trying. But I mean, the post-match comments, they were the real shocker for me. The Leicester winning, I thought, well, okay, well, it's not the result I expected. But at the same time, I can understand where it's come from. You know, Leicester is still a very good team, Everton, blah, blah, blah. But it was the post-match that surprised me most with Koeman. I don't know if you've seen the quotes from it, but his post-match, his post-match was essentially then ripping into Steve Walsh for not getting deals done in time, because they're obviously talking to Morgan Schneidlin, and he said in his post-match interview that, you know, we just need to get more players in. Why aren't we doing it quick enough? Everyone should be able to see what the problems are. We need more players. Anyone that watched this game should be able to see that we need this, that, and the other. And he was taking a good few shots at the Everton hierarchy for not getting the transfers done. So clearly he's not particularly happy at the moment. I think this one may have pushed him over the edge a bit. But yeah, it's the result doesn't shock me. But I think the fallout from it, you'll probably be hearing about for the next couple of weeks.
Very dangerous territory when you start knocking the people that actually earmarked you as the man to bring in the first place, i.e. Moshiri. I think that's very, very dodgy ground. So, yeah, we'll watch that one with intent. And for the record, as much as you love Morgan Schneider, Ross, I don't think he would have changed this result personally. So,
oh, no, I don't want to see him at Everton. I want to see him somewhere else. I'd rather have him back here, but that's a completely different podcast.
Yeah, true that. And link with Jack Wilshere this week as well, Everton, interestingly. I don't think that one's got much legs to it either, but nevertheless, good result for Ranieri, and probably one of the very few bigger sides to fall this weekend in Everton. Another game we want to look at with you, Josh, is another All-Premier League, an ex-All-Premier League tie, because of course Wolves are no longer a Premier League side. Freudian slip there, but they played like one as they went to the Britannia Stadium and knocked off Stoke. Now, I listened to the BBC programme last night. A lot of unhappy Stoke fans. Not happy with Mark Hughes. Not happy with some of the signings that they were happy with a few months ago. Too many big names not performing. Credit to Wolves as well, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going through the lineup of the Stoke players that were there, it's just a catalogue of ex-Barcelona players and just great players who've got Champions League experience, and to roll over so pathetically against Wolves, who, to be fair, the goalkeeper had an absolute worldie and managed to stop his goal being breached, and they just got everything done. It's really strong Stoke side, as I say, and I'm not surprised that Stoke fans are not very happy, as a cup run is one of those things that fans of teams that of clubs that finish mid-table and are generally going to have quite a mundane season. I know it sounds harsh, but I think the reality is Stoke are probably going to finish somewhere between 13th and 8th, and that's all they're going to have is a cup run, and to bow out against lower league opposition in the third round is just unacceptable for them. And I think Mark Hughes is, on shaky ground, especially with comments that have been made by players on their way out of the club, especially in the summer.
Yeah, I noticed that. It wasn't the most happiest parting of ways with some of those players, was it? So, and on the other side, Ross, there's a player you wanted to let our listeners know a little bit about. Certainly a player that should be on the radar of all hipsters, I think, for Wolves.
Yeah, the first goal scorer, Helder Costa, scored a very nice goal in that game against Stoke. But for me, and I'm sure Josh would rather give it to Lewis Dunk, but for me, Helder Costa has been the player of the season so far in the Championship. I think he's been absolutely phenomenal. And despite all the troubles that Wolves have had with the managerial shake-up, the new ownership, the huge turnover of players, Helder Costa is consistently turning up, consistently scoring goals, consistently dragging Wolves through games where they are really suffering. I think he's going to be a really big player. And I think he's from Benfica, or that's where he's on loan from. I don't expect him to be at Wolves next year unless they spend a lot of money bringing him in, because I know that a lot of the kids that are being sent out around on loan from some of the big Portuguese sides are on quite big wage packages, so I don't know if a club like Wolves are going to be able to open their wallets far enough to get him in. But certainly he's impressing me a hell of a lot, and I suspect there's a lot of clubs on the continent that will be watching him as well.
Yes, just 22 years of age. He was actually on Monaco's books last season. I don't know whether he is still technically a Benfica player or not, but I know he was definitely at Monaco.
He is a Benfica player. I believe, although I could be wrong, there is some kind of deal behind the scenes with Benfica and Wolves. There was something struck in the summer because they were linked with Talisca at one point.
That's right, yeah.
But they've got Olajon from Benfica, Helder Costa, and João Teixeira. All from Benfica. I'm sure there's something going on with them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I remember with Costa when he was at Monaco, he played a lot of games actually. I think it's 20 plus games, and pretty sure he got 3 or 4 goals for Monaco last season. So he was a fairly regular player. So yes, definitely one to keep an eye on at just 22 years of age. So there's one to watch a little bit. Briefly, Josh, Bristol City 0, Fleetwood 0. Not a huge amount to talk about, but good result is for Fleetwood, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those that Bristol City are in a really bad run of form at the moment. Even with Tammy Abraham still doing his thing up front, they're now 7 games without a win, and this is their first draw in that game. In that run, where they've lost 6 beforehand. Fleetwood, I think, will be pretty happy, but they could have got more out of this game, I think, because Bristol City have been absolutely woeful.
Of course, they'll take them back to a replay at their own stadium, so they hope they'll be able to finish the job. Let's pick out another game for yourself, Ross. Just quickly want to look at Watford very briefly, and then transition into Derby, if you will. So just briefly on Watford, is this the result that changes things for Matt Sarri? Simple question. They won 2-0 against Burton Albion.
No, Burton are in not a very good run of form. They are still very much a League One side. They've done some good business to get some decent level Championship players in, but they are still very much a League One side because they don't have the budget of a Championship side. So, for all intents and purposes, this was Watford versus a League One side, and it doesn't surprise me whatsoever to see them win 2-0. I don't want to sound too harsh on Burton because obviously they're a team in my favourite division, and I feel very protective of all my children. But at the same time, it's a tough game for them. It really was, and I think Watford are probably probably would look at that and have said we expected to win that quite comfortably, at least with a clean sheet. So.
Yeah, goal for Jerome Sinclair, who's quite highly thought of, came from Liverpool in the summer, and Kabasele's goal was set up by 18 or 19-year-old Brandon Mason, making his first appearance or first start for Watford, having come on as a sub against Crystal Palace over the festive period. So he looks a little bit of a find, given his debut by Volta Matsari. But sticking with you, Ross, good result for Derby away at West Brom. Tony Pulis' side again. A lot of unhappy Baggies fans on social media last night. Again, they were looking at a cup run, but two clinical strikes from Darren Bent and a lovely free kick from Thomas Ince means that Derby are the ones that are going to progress under Steve McLaren.
Yeah, Matt Phillips' goal wasn't bad either. Strange game that all three goals came from outside the area. I always kind of questioned the quality of the actual football when all of the goals are scored from outside the area, but if you haven't seen Tom Ince's free kick, for me that's goal of the game. I know the BBC pulled out Darren Bent's goal as goal of the game, but I thought that the free kick was brilliant. It moves so quickly and bends so quickly that the goalkeeper doesn't even move for it. He just kind of knows it's going in. So I'm really happy for Derby. You know, they haven't had a fantastic run as of late in the Championship, but they are improving quickly. And I know Nigel Pearson was only there for a cup of tea, but I think his influence can really be seen at Derby. You know, the sheer amount of goals they're keeping out in comparison to some of the games they were playing last season, I think has made them a lot tougher and a much bigger prospect for the playoffs this year or promotion next year. So I think this is a really good statement from them, a good reminder that they can burst into those playoff places near the end of the season. Hopefully for them, they get a nice tasty cup run, maybe get down to the fourth or fifth round. Well, they're in the fourth round, but you know, the fifth round, maybe try and upturn some trees, because I don't think the playoffs are for them this year. So good cup run could be a good balance between that and the league.
Music to Mal Morris's ears, or indeed pockets, whichever way you look at it. And nice away kit, by the way, Derby. You know me. I like an away kit, or I like a kit, full stop, really. So, yeah, big fan of that one. So Derby are through, and Millwall are through, Josh, as well. Somewhat surprisingly, they're having all sorts of issues with their ground, as we touched on in the last podcast, but didn't seem to affect them against Eddie Howe's Bournemouth, who was heavily criticised by his own fans and the media for making 11 changes, and it showed as Millwall ran out 3-0 winners over the Cherries.
Yeah, Millwall still playing in Lewisham for the time being, but we'll see how long that continues. But yeah, as you say, it was a strong-ish Bournemouth side. It's a team that, you know, would win the Championship with the players they had in there. They've got the £15.3 million signing in Jordan Ibe, or eBay, however you want to say it, in the lineup, and it's not what we've seen from Bournemouth of late. As you know, we've mentioned on other podcasts that, especially when they played against Arsenal, they were a completely different team. They just looked woeful and just all out of sorts, which even if you've made 11 changes, I think in training, you all play to the same mentality. You generally play with this same group of players. To see them turn out that kind of result is really poor, but all credit to Millwall. They worked really hard, dug in and gave everything and got what they deserved.
Yeah, fair play to them. I have to be said, it was quite the turnaround in result. I didn't see that coming, and as I say, yet another one of Paul Masters' predictions not turning out so well. I think, to be fair, I think even I would have thought Bournemouth would have gone further than just this one round, but they have exited the competition. Let's have a look at a couple of the other results just to quickly run through. Huddersfield Town getting a 4-0 win over Port Vale. They're comfortably through under David Wagner, who continues to be in charge. No news on this Wolfsburg thing at the moment, so I can only assume that he is going to stay. And a 5-1 victory for Brentford over Eastleigh. Eastleigh's dream is over. A couple of nice goals in that game, actually. Brentford looking the part in that one. A 2-1 win for Wycombe Wanderers over Stourbridge. Stourbridge's famous run comes to an end. Big Bo Akinfenwa with the winning goal there. Lovely goal actually from Scar to equalise for Stourbridge at the time, but Wycombe running out winners. Norwich Southampton, we should get Ross's thoughts on this one. A couple of changes to Puel's lineup for this one, Ross. Davey for a young keeper who had a little bit of a moment to forget, but overall disappointed to chuck this away late on because Van Dijk and Yoshida, your favourite, had Saints seemingly through, and then a last-minute equaliser for Naismith means that there will be a replay.
Yeah, it's a bit of a joke of an equaliser as well, because it's 92nd minute. ball comes in and there is no one around Stephen Naismith. No one is anywhere near him, and he's just managed to head it in. The thing is, the performance was really, really good this week. I know the argument will be it's Championship side Norwich, they've not been that great. Well, yeah, but take it from someone that's been following Norwich all season. They can still play really good football, and sometimes in this run they haven't got exactly what they deserved. So it was always going to be a tough fixture, and I honestly thought we were going out this weekend. So to turn in the kind of performance that we did, I was really, really happy with. The issues around Claudwell are now being ramped up again, because obviously we've thrown this away so stupidly when we've got a semi-final against Liverpool during the week. So this fixture that we have to now replay next week, I think it is the last thing we needed, but it's just the way it goes. A player switches off in the last minute and suddenly it's 2-2 and you've got to replay a fixture. So it's been a bit of a mixed week for Southampton, with Everton on Monday and then the Les Reed interview midweek where we found out that Jose Fonte wants to leave. So for me, I'm looking at the positives here. I thought the performance was fantastic. It's just a shame that we switched off so late in the game.
Yeah, disappointing end to it. But at the end of the day, at least it's it's another game which you don't really need given the League Cup commitments, etc. But at least you got some goals. I mean, can we give you that? Yeah, I can give you that.
Apparently, according to the BBC Solent guy, it was the header of the year, the header of the season from Maya Yoshida. I've seen it. It's a bloody good header. But I'm not sure I'd go as far as header of the season. Maybe that's me just not liking my Yoshida, I don't know. But it was a bullet, but I'm not sure it was the world's greatest header.
True, and Virgil van Dijk just continuing to impress as well. And he hasn't been in the greatest form recently, has he? But that goal will just keep his name in the headlines, so I'm sure.
Well, Les Reed said midweek he's not going, not at least in January. So he can carry on doing that for all I care. As long as he's not going, that's cool.
We'll expect to see him signed for somebody by the end of January then in that case. That's always seems to be the way it happens, doesn't it? Josh, let's come on to the team close to your heart, seeing as we've done Ross's. Let's talk about Brighton. 2-0 victory over Muck Dons, as I like to call them, MK Dons. A couple of players returning from long-term injury, well, particularly Baron Kayal with the opening goal and Toma Hemed with Toma Hemed with the second goal. 2-0 victory, fairly comfortable, happy with what you saw?
Yeah, it was an incredibly comfortable game for Brighton. There wasn't really anything in there to worry about. It was really good to see Kyle back. He's going to be really important for the push to the Premier League. He's a very classy midfielder and definitely deserves to be playing in a higher league. Good to see Toma Hemed get a start. Glenn Murray's been keeping him out for most of it, only coming on and getting the odd penalty or last minute goal, really. That's the only look in he's had. I have to say, Solly March did have a poor game, which hopefully keeps Southampton off so he doesn't end up there. But it was really nice to see as well some other youth players come in. Rob Hunt at right back is someone to keep an eye on because he's really got some good potential, as does Connor Goldston at centre back. They both were really solid in defence and worth a look at if anyone's interested in following Brighton.
What was that Toma Hemed stat you had yesterday? That incredible penalty stat.
Yeah, so Toma Hemed has got an 88% success record at sending the goalkeeper the wrong way at a penalty, which is the highest in world football.
Who counts that? It's such a strange stat to have counted.
That is quite the niche. It's just quite the niche stat, isn't it? Like, it's just one of those that you think, like, really? Actually, as Ross says, there's a guy in a Pacamac recording that every single week. It's really quite a bizarre thing to record. But and he's expecting a youngster, I believe. Josh, you just popped a tweet up from him there?
He is, with a rather odd tweet. I didn't really know what was going. I thought his wife had a problem and her back was broken, but
it's a very strange picture, isn't it?
Cleared it up. So
yeah.
Yes. A new baby coming, which is really good because a lot of the Brighton players have had children in the city, and it's generally what keeps them there. People like Bruno and Ingo Calderon have said before that their children are born in Brighton, and it keeps them close to the club, and that it's one reason why Bruno has stayed there, because he could have had offers to go elsewhere. He said no, he'd like to stay.
Agreed. Yes, and I see Tony Knockhart was putting out some glowing tweets about about Brighton this week as well. So hopefully he'll be sticking around, because we're big fans of Big Tony on this podcast after the celebration a few weeks ago. So yes, we'll have to open like the boys at Football Rumble. We'll have to have a Tony Knockout Hall of Fame or something, because I love him. Anyway, that's enough about him. Couple of other results: Sunderland 0, Burnley 0. Not a lot to say, really. A couple of chances at each end, but not a lot. Joey Barton making his second debut for Burnley. Good or not good to see him back? I don't know. It doesn't bother me. QPR losing again. No big surprise there. Blackburn Rovers were the victors in that game. Liam Feeney with what proved to be the winner, the second goal. Blackpool 0, Barnsley 0, which we mentioned earlier on. 3-2 victory for Oxford United away at Rotherham. Small upset with divisions, but the way Rotherham are playing, probably not a big upset, to be perfectly honest. And on the Saturday, the only other games, Birmingham 1, Newcastle 1, which we successfully avoided Jimmy, our good friend, and Anguna from watching. So well done, you two. Thank you very much. And Bolton 0, Palace 0, the Sam Allardyce derby, and Sutton 0, AFC Wimbledon 0. Which I suppose we could sort of slightly touch on, actually, couldn't we? Josh, you had something else before we go into the evening game, which we'll touch on in a second, and a special goal. You just had one other thing you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, this was a fixture that will always be in the history books for AFC Wimbledon. Playing Sutton was the first game they had when they reformed, which I believe was in 2002. So, yeah, it was just really good to see that fixture come along again. Just adds a little bit extra special to the draw, and really good on Sutton being a non-league team, getting a replay with the League One side, and hopefully that means that it will get shown on TV, because there's not many replays in this group that would really draw the eye. So it'd be nice for someone to go a bit hipster and take this fixture on.
Yeah, I like the idea of a full hipster fixture, so I'm all game for that one. Okay, so we've got two games to cover left. Very briefly, I wanted to mention the game between Accrington Stanley, if you haven't seen the advert, you won't get that reference, but if you have, good. And Luton Town, because it saw, probably for me, the goal of the round. If you haven't seen it, do look it up. It's an absolute howitzer from, I think is it Sean McConville? I think his name's Sean.
It's McConville. I can't think if it's Sean or not.
It is Sean. Christ, I'm such a geek. Seriously, how do I even know that? Sean McConville with the opening goal. It is a beauty. You've both seen it. Sets the ball out wide of the right-hand post from the angle. Reminds me of a Dennis Bergkamp goal against Barnsley years ago, for any Arsenal fans listening. Yeah, it's an absolute belter. Really, really delightful strike. So do look that one up. That's our goal of the round to look up. And then we go on to Arsenal Preston. I'll get. Shall I go for a biased view or an unbiased view? Let's go for an unbiased view. Ross, I'll give you this one. I wasn't a particular fan of Mr. Simon Grayson's tactics or style. I didn't find Preston particularly easy on the eye. I thought they were very much the classic "they don't like it Upham" style. I will give them credit for staying in the game, because obviously it was Arsenal and they took the lead, but ultimately it was Olivier Giroud yet again, and Arsenal late yet again who prevailed eventually. What was your sort of overall thoughts of this one?
Well, it's a great result for Arsenal, because these are usually the games they struggle in when teams get at them and kind of push them and kick them about. So I was quite happy to see Arsenal end up getting through. All I would say on the Preston point is that Preston in League One played some nice stuff, because they're on an even kilt, I should say, with the rest of the league. They came up to the Championship. They don't have oodles of money. They can't invest in players that pass it along the floor like some other Championship teams do. Like Wolves did, for example. They went out and they attacked Stoke, because they've got players that can go out and attack, whereas Preston, they kind of stay in the Championship by being dogged and kicking the crap out of people. So it didn't shock me to see them do it again against Arsenal. At the same time, I didn't think it was the prettiest. I don't think they're the prettiest side of the Championship, don't get me wrong. But I can completely understand why they went the way they did, and they hung in there. They almost got the result they needed. And I think we'll see from the Sunday fixture, there's a game that got absolutely lambasted for the way that the away side played. Seen as boring and negative, and they should have gone for this, they should have gone for that. Not to that. You've only got to look at the Preston fans and how happy they were to be drawing 1-1 with Arsenal going into the 85th minute to know that regardless of what you thought of the style, that is exactly what the Preston fans wanted to see and exactly the result they were after. Until, obviously, Giroud then won it.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, it's just me being a snob, I suppose. I'll hold my hands up on that one. But and I will. What I will say is fair play to Preston. If they had have taken their chances, Arsenal could easily have been 4-0 down. And crikey, I can only imagine our support base if that had happened. Jesus, doesn't even bear thinking about. But nevertheless, Arsenal yet another one of the big sides to make it to the next round. That brings us on to the Sunday matches then. And Josh, what did you make of the Liverpool Plymouth Argyle game? I'll get both of your views on this one actually, but as Ross touched on there, my sort of town of dwelling, I live in Plymouth at the moment. They took 9,000 fans to Anfield. Absolutely fantastic atmosphere. They were brilliant. I tweeted a picture actually of my friend who I know personally celebrating wildly at the final whistle. He was caught on camera. He's loving that. In a blue Mac though. I mean, come on. Seriously, Buster, what are you wearing blue for? Exactly, yeah. What's he thinking? But nevertheless, terrific result, really, Josh. When you look at it for Argyle, and arguably this is the biggest shock of the round. Surely, Jurgen Klopp playing an understrength side. So, which argument do you fall on? Did Argyle get disrespected by Liverpool, or did Argyle disrespect them by just sticking everyone behind the ball and hoping for the best?
Yeah, I think if you look at the statistics of the game, it looks like Plymouth it was backs to the wall for 90 minutes, and fair play to them. That's what they need to do to get the result that they've managed to get, a home tie. Liverpool going to have to now trudge all the way down to Plymouth midweek as well, and I'm sure Jurgen Klopp's not going to be too happy about it, but yeah, Liverpool having 28 shots in that game, but only 4 on target. Sounds like they maybe need some shooting practice, and maybe shoot more isn't necessarily the best adage here, and maybe shoot better.
Yeah, how ironic.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also had a friend that had made the trip up there with the Green Barmy Army, and it's great for them to have a day like that, and that's what the FA Cup is all about.
Agreed. And Ross, from the perspective of Argyle, obviously being a man who supports the lower league sides, the other argument to Argyle's style and what they did on the day was that money that they're going to make from that return trip will probably cover wages and various other things for 6 to 9 months of the club, which is crucial for a club of Argyle's size. And with a little bit of help from a wet willy from Sonny Bradley and Emre Can's ear, they did enough to restrict Liverpool to not getting those shots on target. Should it be Jurgen Klopp that's under more, what's the word? Scrutiny, that's the word I'm looking for. Because he's got previous, hasn't he? With another Devonian club last year, with Exeter. He's kind of been bitten again today, hasn't he?
Yeah, was it 2-2 last year with Exeter? Didn't they get a replay? That rings a bell.
Yeah, 2-2 and then 3-0 at Anfield, I think it was afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is that big teams do see cup competitions, especially when they draw lower league sides, as a good chance to play the youth players, which is cool. I don't begrudge them that. There's certainly bigger fish to fry for Liverpool at the moment. They got a semi-final in midweek against Southampton in the EFL Cup. They've got a very good chance of making the Champions League. If Chelsea slip up, they're in prime position to pick on them for the title. So I understand it. I don't think it's exactly disrespectful to make as many changes as they did, because everyone approaches a third-round cup game differently. But I certainly think the thing that is disrespectful is assuming that a team like Plymouth should go out and try and attack and try and take the game to Liverpool, and that they had 20% of the ball across the entire game. I think it's in and around 20%. They got a lot of stick for the way they played, especially on BT Sport, which is who had the game. And I, for one, just can't understand it, because it's the same as I said about Preston. You've only got to look at the faces of those Plymouth fans when the whistle went. I follow nearly every single EFL team on Twitter, and the Plymouth account was retweeting so many fans that were just saying, what a performance, what an incredible game, can't believe we've done it, so proud of the boys. That's what the FA Cup's about. I don't care if you wanted to see pretty football. If you wanted to go see pretty football, then you watch a different game. You don't go and watch Liverpool versus Plymouth, because you should be prepared for Plymouth to sit 11 behind the ball and try and keep Liverpool out. This is a fantastic story from this round of fixtures. If you didn't think it was a great spectator sport, then okay, that's cool, that's your opinion, and that's fine. But if you are seriously upset that Plymouth got this result by playing quote-unquote poorly, then I'm sorry, but it was up to Liverpool to break them down. They didn't do it, and Plymouth fully deserved their replay.
Yes, and I'm bracing myself, because there'll be a lot of Scousers that will be working their way down to Plymouth in a couple of weeks or 10 days' time, whenever it is, for the replay. That will be a night, let me tell you, under the lights. That will be a full house at Home Park, so a proper old-fashioned stadium, and it will be rocking that night. And where I live, actually, I can hear, on a good day, I can hear the crowd from over a couple of rooftops over from where the ground is.
You should be
and
in
up
the crowd,
hill.
Chris.
Do you know what? I'm one of those people, Ross. I don't like these, oh, well, there's a big club in town, so I must go and watch fans. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be one of those. If somebody offers and opportunities there, I might go down, but I don't like being that guy. Oh, well, I live in Plymouth, there's a big team, I'll go and see them. So, if somebody offers me a ticket, then I'll go down and I'll report back live to the English Breakfast Pod. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. But I don't think they'll be employing me as a VIP for that game. Let's just say that much.
But even with Derek Adams, you should be.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah. I'm still in the process of, or I say still in the process of, we have still got an interview with Derek lined up. So that will happen at some point when I get to meet him in person. So maybe I'll push that forward. We'll see. Anyway, so good result for Plymouth, and like Josh says, the fact that a lot of the media for BT Sport, Steve McManaman in particular, was very scathing. Who did he used to play for again? Yes, Liverpool. So I think they're a little bit overly sniffy, personally, but that's that. So that's probably the biggest shock of the round so far. No shocks. Tottenham beating Aston Villa by 2-0. Not a lot to be said. It wasn't a very good spectacle. Yet another game that was picked for TV that really shouldn't have been, in my opinion. That's putting my Arsenal hat aside. It's nothing to do with Spurs, who played very well overall. Goals from Davis and Hong-Min Son, but it was a poor spectacle, really was. Middlesbrough 3, Sheffield Wednesday 0. Our friend Nat Dean texted me tonight, was saying that she was very, very cheesed off with the Wednesday fans who had gone off and won about it. Another goal for Greg Ledbetter, of all people. Alvaro Negredo with a goal after a goalkeeping howler, and Martin Deroux with a late clincher. Daniel Ayala sent off for the home side. And Josh, Chelsea going to be another one of the favourites for this competition. You would suspect 4-1 victory over Peterborough. John Terry made his return to the first team, and then made his exit from the first team, sent off in this game, which also saw a lesser spotted Michi Batshuayi pop up with a goal. Do you think Chelsea are, again, one of the favourites for this competition?
Yeah, I think any of the teams that we would call, in inverted commas, big teams, still lifting the competition, especially those that aren't in Europe, so have got less to concentrate on, less distractions, should be aiming for this to be their cup. I think we'll be looking at people like Man United might struggle with the draw they end up with, especially if they're going to target the League Cup. I know how much Mourinho loves that cup to kind of get himself underway with a trophy. So yeah, I think Conte will be looking at this and the prestige that comes, albeit the gloss has come off the FA Cup, so to speak, that comes with winning it. It will always be good to win the FA Cup. I think he will target it for the win.
Yeah, winning breeds a good habit, doesn't it? And speaking of winning, the final game that we'll touch on from the round, of course, was a victory for Fulham away at Cardiff. And the main reason we've highlighted this one as well is because Ross got to watch this one live. I touted Fulham as one of my dark horses for Championship promotion. Ross very kindly gave me a nudge on Twitter about this earlier on. But you're starting to become a believer, Ross, aren't you?
Yeah, well, for a start, it's always important to let people know when someone's got things right. So I wasn't going to pass up the chance.
It doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't, which is why it has to be done. If someone gets something right, you've got to congratulate them on it. So full credit for you to predicting Fulham, because they are arguably the best footballing side in the Championship right now. And I know that's a bold statement with Brighton playing very well, with Newcastle in there as well. with Reading playing some very good stuff as well. But Fulham, they are just so easy on the eye, especially in that game. Cardiff weren't at their best, but they still got stuck in, especially in the first 20 minutes. And then eventually it just kind of looked like they just kind of couldn't keep their eyes on the ball because it's moving so quickly. Lucas Piazon is a player that I've always liked, but he seems to have settled in really, really well to that Fulham midfield. And they honestly could have had far, far more than 2. So I was really, really impressed with Fulham. Don't expect them to win this by any stretch of the imagination. But if that's the way they're playing every single week, and you don't get to watch every 90 minutes of every game from the Championship every week, so I couldn't tell you for definite, but if that's the performance they're putting in every week, then my God, Fulham are a beautiful team to watch, and hopefully they'll be in and around the playoffs this year.
Watch them plummet down the table. Now now you've given me some credit, but hopefully not. One word answer from you both. The game tomorrow, Cambridge Leeds. Who wins? Josh?
Cambridge. Let's go for an upset.
Oh, love it. Ross?
Leeds
for me, unfortunately. I hope we're wrong. Love to see Cambridge go through, but yeah, Leeds are on a bit of a tear right now. So there we go. So to recap then, Manchester City, Manchester United, Hull City, Blackburn Rovers, Brighton Hove Albion, Millwall, Wigan Athletic, Oxford, Rochdale Derby, Leicester, Wickham, Watford, Wolves, Huddersfield, Brentford, Accrington, Stanley, Arsenal, Fulham, Chelsea, Middlesbrough, Spurs are all through. And then Leeds and Cambridge are going to have to play tomorrow. Of course, Sutton and Wimbledon will replay, as will Bolton Palace, as will Birmingham, Newcastle, Bristol City, Fleetwood, Norwich, Southampton, Barnsley, Blackpool, Sunderland, Derby. And I think that's all the games. So, yes, I think that's all of them.
Liverpool, Plymouth.
Oh, Liverpool, of course. Leave the best to last. So all of those will have to be replayed. So obviously we'll touch on those probably in a normal quote-unquote English breakfast in the coming weeks. So we will fill you in on those results when the replays are done. Okay, we'll finish with a couple of questions. We've had just a couple come in and also a little bit of feedback, which I'm going to start with actually. Our thanks to all of you guys and girls that are subscribing to us and tweeting us and all those wonderful things. We really appreciate it. We've had a little bit of feedback on YouTube, a bit negative actually. So I thought I'd give this person opportunity to get their comment read on the podcast. It's from MH on our YouTube channel. Just having a bit of a dig us about Van Gaal and David Moyes at Man United, saying Mourinho is not doing a better job than either of those two. Saying that he is doing a better job. Sorry, because I think we were saying that maybe he hasn't upgraded too much from those days. But he's come up with he or she, I should say, has come up with a very compelling argument and quite a passionate argument on our YouTube channel about why they feel that we are wrong. So thank you, appreciate it. It's they've put it in an articulate way, but a passionate way. So we thank you very much for your feedback, MH, and keep it coming. Also, Leanne Warnell sent us a quick message again on our YouTube, basically listening to our very first podcast. You poor thing, Leanne. It must have sounded horrendous. I listened to the first 5 minutes and went, crikey, we've come a long way. It was all the way back. We had 476 views on YouTube, and it was all the way back on October the 12th, 2015. Goodness gracious me. That was back in the days when we had a different crew and we had all the leagues on one podcast. Heady times. But thank you, Leanne, for that feedback. It did make me smile. So that was very, very kind of you. Thank you very much for that. Okay. I think that's all the feedback. If I haven't read your feedback, I apologise, but we're a bit pressed for time. So let's get a couple of these questions in while we have time. Bobby Chakraborty, or as our co-host of occasion, Danny says, Bobby, check your booty. It's not that at all, but hello, Bobby. Thank you for bearing with Danny. He's a very special soul. He wants to ask, who do you think will win it, as in the FA Cup, and would you change it to allow more lower league teams into the competition? And I'm going to extend that and say Scottish teams as well. Ross, let's start with you. Would you change it? Who do you think is going to win it?
No, I wouldn't change it. I think that the setup we've got is as good as it can get. Maybe without replays. They're probably the worst thing about the FA Cup. Unfortunately, the fat just gets trimmed early on, and unfortunately, you just don't get to see many lower league sides because the money is so top heavy in the football pyramid these days. As for who's going to win it, I honestly don't know this year, because I want to see how the League Cup goes before I make predictions about who's going to win the FA Cup, because I still don't know if Man United really want the League Cup or if they really want the FA Cup. I don't know how Liverpool are going to react to it. Chelsea, I think they're not going to be too bothered unless they start getting in really deep, which I'm sure they can. So I honestly couldn't tell you this year. If I could pick a club I want to win it, clearly it would be Southampton, but I just don't know.
It is a bit of a tough one to call right now. Josh, would you allow other teams into it? And do you have a particular team you think might win it at the moment?
No, I would, as Ross said, keep the system the same. I think also the incentive for winning, I think, should also be the same. Potentially more prize money along the way. There is a huge TV deal that I know it came into the Premier League as opposed to the FA Cup, but it would be nice of the bigger teams just to help their smaller team cousins out in the rest of the Football League. But yeah, I think to win the competition, it's going to be a controversial one, but Tottenham. Ooh. I think Tottenham could do it this year.
Wash your mouth out, young man. No, I can see where you're coming from, as much as it hurts me to even comprehend the idea. Sorry, Spurs fans. But hey, at least I'm honest about who I follow, all right? There's no airs and graces on this pod.
I think one thing about the FA Cup, and I normally pick on La Liga for being a league that I really don't enjoy, but I think the one thing La Liga does have over us, or something that they're ahead of the curve on, is that mid-table sides are lower prioritise the cups, because they know they can't get anywhere in the league, because the top two positions are always in lockdown, and then generally speaking it's of 3, 4 or 5 teams for the European places. The rest of the league, they really go for the competitions elsewhere, and that's, I think, partly the reason why so many Spanish sides do well in Europe. I would love to see English sides adopt that. I would love to see them stop rotating so much and really go for the cups, but I'm not sure if we're ever going to see it.
True. I would invite other teams in. I'd have the Scottish teams in the League Cup. I think that's the way to embed them. And yeah, I would probably consider having. I think what I'd probably do is I'd seed it so that Premier League teams were away from home in the first round, maybe just to make it interesting, see how that got on. But yeah, there's so many ways of changing things. I'd also have a Champions League place for the FA Cup winners, but that's never going to happen. So such is life. As for winners. Tough one. I like Man United, if I'm honest. I mean, I don't. Well, you know what I mean. No, I think Mourinho. You can't rule out Mourinho in a competition like this, as one of you said, or both of you said. He does like to get a trophy under his belt early on in a competition. So I think it's a bit of a lame answer, but an obvious answer, I should say. But yeah, I think Man United will go far. Other than that, I think it is the obvious candidates: Man City, Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal. A dark horse, Leicester City, dark horse, just because it would be so apt for them to win the Premier League and then the next season go deep in the Champions League and win the FA Cup. Could see it coming, could see it happening. So yeah, they're my dark horse. Depending on the draw, of course. So there you go. Another question. This comes from Robbie, who I think is a fairly new follower at ARRXW Smith. He's a Man United fan. He wants to ask just how important is the FA Cup these days? It's a pertinent question right now. Ross, how important is it to you or in general?
In general, I suspect that managers especially see it as a bit of a distraction because there's so many bigger fish to fry. For fans, I still think that the fans that go to the games, I think, are still really passionate about it. If you're a fan that doesn't get the chance to go to many, or a fan that just doesn't live in the area of your team, I suspect it's lower down on your list. But for clubs like Southampton, like Everton, like Leicester, and lower than that, it's still a massive competition. It's still one everyone wants to say they've won. I remember when Portsmouth won it, 2008, I think now. They would not shut up about it, and everyone else around here was going, oh, well, it's just the FA Cup. And I'm like, it's just the FA Cup? I'm not that keen on Pompey, but this is massive that they've just won the FA Cup. So it is still big. I remember when Wigan won it. That was huge when Wigan won it. So it's still a competition steeped in history that anyone should want to win, but I suspect it depends on your location to your club and how often you go to see them will really dictate how much you invest in this cup of competition.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And what about to you, Josh? Again, sort of from a Brighton or Arsenal perspective, is it important to you? Has it sort of lost a bit of its glow?
Yeah, I think the FA Cup as a competition has definitely lost a large part of its relevance in the recent times, especially with European football taking centre stage. But the next few rounds that we've got is where that old cliche of the magic of the FA Cup was kind of born and bred. And that's what it's all about. It's about those smaller teams, those Sutton Uniteds, those Lincoln Cities, those, just trying to think, something like Millwall beating Bournemouth. It's those kind of giant killings that makes the FA Cup unique. You know, you can enter it from the ninth tier of English football. You can start getting into it. So that's a really big spanning competition. You know, it kicks off almost about 2 weeks after the final with the qualifying rounds. It's a huge competition. It's the oldest cup in England, and I think it does deserve more respect than it does get from certain teams when they put out not particularly great teams to just get it out of the way, you know, make sure they drop out. But it is understandable that you get certain teams who are fighting for more important things regarding relegation. I think if you're challenging for promotion, you should probably have a squad strong enough to put on a run in the FA Cup, and especially those mid-table teams who haven't really got anything else to play for in their season, and this should be something they're targeting.
Yeah, agree with that. Definitely. Final question. It's on the same lines, actually, from our good friend Noma. She wanted to ask, does anyone honestly care about this cup before the quarter-finals? Just a brief sentence from you both on that one. Josh, I'll start with you. Do you care before the quarter-finals?
I think after the quarterfinals is where it generally gets quite boring if your team isn't in it, because there's nothing there for the underdog. By that time, the underdogs have been weeded out at that point, I think, unless you've got someone a bit like a Cardiff City who got to the semis, I think, a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think of others. Well, Pompey getting all the way, Wigan getting all the way, and managing to get relegated in the same season. It's very rare that you get a smaller team coming through, and the FA Cup is all about the underdog story.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that one. And Ross, yourself?
I actually think it's the EFL Cup that only gets interesting at the quarterfinal stage. I think the FA Cup is always interesting, depending on how much you invest in it and how much you follow it. I can tell you now that Southampton are in the semi-final of the EFL Cup, I love that trophy. Right up for winning that. You know, before the quarter-final stages, I wouldn't have been too bothered if we got knocked out, but I'm always a bit annoyed if we go out in the FA Cup too early. So, for me, this is still the big trophy in England. It's still the biggest one, and I think it's interesting from minute one myself.
Yeah, I have to confess. When I was watching some of the games yesterday, yes, I had personal life distractions yesterday, so I did actually. Cardinal sin. I actually missed the first 25 minutes of the Arsenal game because I was out viewing properties with my partner. But yeah, I have to confess, I get excited about knowing that there's lots of teams playing at one time, but I don't know. There is a part of me that is I love the FA Cup, genuinely I do, and I still have the passion for it. But these early rounds, they are a little bit tougher to get excited about as opposed to a usual sort of weekend of Premier League or Championship football.
I think it would help exponentially if BBC, Sky, BT picked the right fixtures.
100%. Yeah, I would genuinely would have enjoyed watching, you know, even a 0-0 between Wimbledon and who was it? Wimbledon and Sutton. Thank you. You know, because it's the only time you get to see these clubs, isn't it? You know, it's especially people in foreign countries. You know, they can't get to see League One and League Two football, and even that. Saying that, Ross, you'll know. In fact, both of you will know. Sky don't particularly show that many League One or League Two games these days. You know, it's not as easy to see these clubs unless you support them or you're local. So, you know.
I think it's more to do with the English media for how they broadcast, because there is the ban on the 3 o'clock at Saturday for showing games. So overseas, they got all those games. I think the AFC Wimbledon Sutton United was available in Canada.
It was, yeah. Our friend Jason watched it.
So there are a couple out there. It is that problem that it's the FA Cup weekend. We want to see something different to what we see week in, week out. That's what the FA Cup is. It's a different competition. So I don't really want to see West Ham play Man City because in a couple of weeks' time, if there's something riding on that game for Man City or for West Ham later down the season, it will get televised anyway. So why not stick the boat out and say Ipswich Lincoln will bring you forward? It'll be the Friday night game.
Yeah, and what a game
we'll
it was as well.
Yeah, and we'll see some absolutely brilliant games. It will bring in. I remember when Brighton were at the Withdean, we didn't have £2 coins to rub together, and getting a TV game was a big deal. It's huge for those clubs, and West Ham and Man City don't need that money at all. There's a lot more people down there in the English pyramid that need money, and it's just getting wasted by putting on games like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is. You look at the winners over the past few years; they've always been the big clubs by and large, other than sort of the Pompeys and Cardiff got to a final, Millwall got to a final, didn't they? But yeah, it's generally it's the big clubs, and I really hope I will probably watch Leeds Cambridge actually tomorrow at some point, or I'll have it on, and I really do hope that this. I think what we need. I don't know if you guys agree. I think we need a draw with some genuinely interesting ties. It feels like I can't remember the last FA Cup draw where I went. There's at least 7 or 8 ties where you go, oh yeah, and it's not just about. Yes, of course, you'd love to see a Manchester derby or an Arsenal Spurs or whatever. But at this stage of the competition, it's all about the romance. And I know somebody asked me yesterday, said, "Who would you like Arsenal to draw?" And I said, I'd love to see him play a Wimbledon or rekindle the memories of Luton. Of course, they've gone out now, so that can't happen. But obviously, Arsenal have already played Plymouth, so that can't really happen again. Well, it could, I suppose. But yeah, I'd love to see Arsenal play a side that they're not familiar with, and I'd be well up for sort of a Wimbledon type of a game. So
you say that about a Manchester derby and how we'd like to see that. We had one in the third round. We had Barrow Rochdale, and everyone ignored it. That was one of the ties of the round. It was a local derby, Barrow at home. First time they've made the third round in X amount of years. That was a big fixture, and everyone just went, nah. I'd rather not. It's like, well, you missed out.
And if you want a Manchester derby and you're talking about City United, we're in the same bloody league. We'll get that game twice across the season. Mix it up a little bit. And I think what you've said about making sure that the Premier League teams don't get the home leg for certain rounds, I think is perfect for it. If you scroll through who the home sides were in this round of the FA Cup, that's probably what made it seem a little bit more boring, because the likes of Sutton only ended up with AFC Wimbledon coming to them. There was a chance they could have ended up with Arsenal or Aston Villa. There were bigger clubs out there that could have ended up having a difficult away leg to a tiny team, and those are the draws we want to see.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope that game between Wimbledon and Sutton, obviously one of the smaller clubs is going to get through that. I really hope they get a big draw. And again, like we said with Plymouth and Liverpool, that sort of money will keep clubs in business and pay for stands and players and wages and all sorts. So yeah, let's bring back the magic of the FA Cup here at the Hipsters Podcast. We shall be doing all we can to keep you entertained throughout the round. So there we go. Okay, we'll draw a line under that for another week then, chaps. What was supposed to be a short podcast turned into a ranty finish. That's what I like about us. We can just freeform it as we go. So thank you for everyone for tuning in to this whenever it is you listen. We've recorded this on a Sunday night. It will either go out on the Sunday evening or, of course, the Monday afternoon, evening as well, one of the two. So whenever you're listening to us, we thank you for your continued support. It is very, very much appreciated. Quick update, we're up to 350 subscribers on YouTube now. We're trying to hit the 500 mark, so if you know somebody that doesn't already subscribe to our YouTube channel or our SoundCloud or iTunes, because we obviously want them to subscribe to that as well, give them a nudge. But we're trying to hit 500 YouTube subscribers, and we're trying to reach more and more countries on SoundCloud as well, because we can have a look at the countries we're in as well. So if you fancy giving us a review, do that on iTunes or leave us a comment on our YouTube videos as we've done tonight. We will try our best to get you read out if you make a nice comment or a respectful comment. Even if it's negative or is a bit critical of us, we will give you a little bit of airtime to have your views. And look out in the coming days, because Josh, your blog on Pep is almost ready to go. So that will be put up on our hipsters website, which you can go and have a look at. I'll obviously tweet the link when it's available. And on a slightly, not somber, that's the wrong word, but a sad note, I'm going to give a little shout out on this podcast to it probably should be for the main podcast, but in the absence of doing the European podcast at the moment, I want to give a shout out to Mattia Perra, who some of you won't be familiar with, some of you will be. He's the goalkeeper for Genoa, and he was very unfortunately stretchered off today, having torn the second ACL of his career. He was out for 9 months and missed Euro 2016 with a tear in one knee, and he's now gone and done the other one against Roma today. So sad times, and that sucks for such a young, talented goalkeeper. So yeah, as much as it's one for the European people amongst us, I wanted to just make mention of that and wish him the very best in his recovery, because he's a top young goalkeeper. Right, okay, that will do us then. My thanks to both Ross and Josh. Thank you for your time as always, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
Pleasure as always.
And stay tuned to our podcast at the FH Podcast Twitter account for tomorrow. We will retweet the draw for the FA Cup fourth round. Tweet us your favourite ties, maybe tweet us your winners, and we'll be back to cover the fourth round when it happens. And of course, we'll return next week with both our EFL special, which we will be recording, and the English breakfast after next week's Premier League games. So tune in then, and we'll speak to you very soon.